What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Panel B podcast. I'm Alex Jankowski. Alongside me is Steve Buchanan, and alongside Steve Buchanan, now I'm told nobody ever wants to hear you talk about your own fantasy teams.
They don't.
No one wants to hear about matchups, so I'm just going to say, Julian, I hope your sports betting weekend went better than your season-long fantasy weekend.
For starters, it did. And second of all, Janko killed me in our DK league this weekend.
I did not say it. I love it.
I did not do that bad. My team was a little bit below average in the league. You just scored 194 points against me, which hasn't happened to me in a long, long time. So very unfortunate, but 0-1 is 0-1, and I'm fine with my team.
Many thanks to one Samuel Watkins for that. Let's talk a little bit bigger picture, though, than our own personal interests. A lot of things going on in the NFL and the MLB. We'll start, though, with the biggest news out of baseball, and that is that Christian Yelich will miss at least the rest of this season. Depending on some reports, he could be out for even longer with that fractured kneecap. Injury news that's crippling not only for the Milwaukee Brewers postseason chances, they're a game out of the wild card right now, but also the NL MVP market, more or less, given that it was more or less a two-horse race between Cody Bellinger, Christian Yelich. Bellinger was the favorite at minus 150, and at the time of his injury, Yelich was plus 150. But guys, first off, before we maybe even get into individual markets like that for the Brewers, you can't get more crippling than this.
Crushing. I mean, absolutely crushing. I mean, you literally have one of the best hitters in the entire league. Like you said, not only going down for the season, but potentially next season. I mean, it's almost like reminiscent of a Tommy John surgery with the timeline that they're kind of talking about, at least from a hitter standpoint. So it really makes the National League wild card race more interesting, as if it couldn't be enough. I mean, we still have 4 teams within 3 games of that second spot. The Cubs have been struggling. The Nationals have been struggling a bit. Both teams 4-6 in their last 10. And Milwaukee was on a hot streak. They won 5 in a row, 8-2 in their last 10. And now, Philly, Arizona, Mets, Julian, Mets.
See about that.
Still hanging in. So it's going to be a tight race, but this truly couldn't be a worse time for the Brewers, who were pretty much on the brink of potentially passing the Cubs. And, with the rest of the month to go, who knows where they're going to be. All these teams are still in it. Like I said, the Mets, Arizona, Phillies, Milwaukee all have at least 16, the magical number before they're eliminated. So this is going to go down to the wire. But yeah, even if Milwaukee limps in, you can't like their chances as much without Yelich in that lineup.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I was going to touch on, is that it is baseball, and we're already in the home stretch, and Milwaukee's a game out. So this is one of those things where everybody's going to write off the Brewers, and they still could very well. The Cubs are nothing special this year, and they've got injuries of their own. So this is a spot where I could see Milwaukee still limping in. I wouldn't favor them to do that, but they could still get in the postseason. And then when you're in the postseason in baseball, anything can happen. But
sure,
obviously, huge loss, and then for next season, it crushes them, really. I think it puts them in almost a worse position for next season than this season. Obviously, you'd like to have Yelich in the postseason, but if they can still manage to get there, I don't even think they'll have an opportunity to get there next season without Yelich. So this could still even be a better season than next for Milwaukee. But a brutal blow for them. Loses obviously a big DFS bat for the rest of the season and some of next. And then the NL MVP odds, it's been removed on DK Sportsbook for obvious reasons. And when it reopens, if it reopens, you would have to think Bellinger now becomes, Bellinger was already, you had to lay some extra juice to take Bellinger, and Yelich was just behind him at the plus 150. You would have to think now, when it's a 2-horse race like that nobody else can even get it, and that you would open Bellinger back at like minus 300 or something ridiculous because of how favored he has to be.
Yeah, so Rendon was next at plus 400 at the time.
Was he really?
And
Okay.
I think a lot of that though is going to end up being indicative of Washington's postseason too. I think it's different in the AL where like the two Trout is far and away winning that award, but even like a player like Devers, who was closest, is on a team not likely to make the postseason, to the best of no fault of Andrew Cashner's, of course. Like he's doing all he can to keep that team afloat, as is Devers. Just had to get that in there. But on the NL side, when Bellinger is the best player on the best team, for a guy like Rendon, who or Acuna, I know is also started to creep up there as well. Not to diminish obviously what have been very successful seasons for Rendon in particular, though. Like the team has to make the postseason to even then still have an argument, and even then though it's in all likelihood going to be Bellinger's award, despite he has cooled off. It is worth noting he's cooled off a little bit recently. Is
Trout the slam dunk though right now? And what about Verlander? Like, especially with the second half that he's having,
right?
Like, I think he has to be in the discussion. Like, to slam dunk Trout right now, I think isn't fair, because Verlander has just been absolutely out of his mind. Like, the second half that he's having at his age is just insane. Like, obviously the home runs are an issue, and that might end up hurting him. But when you look at Jacob deGrom, with the lack of wins, obviously not as important anymore. But the voters are overlooking some of those things at this point, it feels like. I just feel like Verlander should very much be in the conversation with Trout. I don't think it's a runaway with Trout just yet.
I just think you run into also not only, how you want to value a pitcher, but how you value or define MVP versus Cy Young. Is another thing that's usually working against pitchers, where, when they win the MVP, it needs to be such a slam dunk. And as baseball and those who vote continue to adopt or at least accept more advanced metrics, and it's just becoming so obvious that Mike Trout, the season that he's having, is head and shoulders. And similarly though, it's the postseason argument too, because I've never been a fan of that, where whether your team makes the postseason or not, especially in baseball, where literally you can hit 1,000 and it doesn't matter. Like in winning, it could be completely out of your hands. I get with a guy like Verlander, even if he only pitches 1 to 5, it's far more in his hands whether the team wins that start than it is with Trout. But the top teams in the AL, Houston, Minnesota, the Yankees, are so balanced and have so many pieces that are stepping up and having career years that while it shouldn't diminish an individual's performance, I think in a way it could lessen how you would define him as the most valuable player.
Fair.
That's just baseball, though. Like, defining that MVP award. Like, you could have a guy like, I don't know, Mike Trout winning MVP would be like in the NBA, Anthony Davis winning MVP on a Pelicans team that finished like 9th in the West or whatever, and put up those ridiculous numbers and might have been like the top DK scorer in terms of points per game that season or something like that.
Well, what was the Thunder the year Russ won, right?
Exactly. Westbrook is the only guy that in a while that has been, kind of that far down in the standings and still pulled it off because the numbers were just that ridiculous for his season.
Right.
But I think from a baseball perspective, you're right. Like, one guy can still have an outstanding season, and it's not enough to impact a team to make the playoffs, especially in a league. Baseball is much more difficult to make the playoffs, just in terms of pure amount of teams that are in versus a lot of other leagues.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll still hold fast that Manning should have won it the year he sat out for the Colts, and they went like 2-14, and it's like clearly he was the most valuable player.
He's an extremely valuable player.
And those debate. I mean, this is just the time of year to have them, and it is a lot of fun. I think just rounding off on the Brewers though. I don't think they were ever a team that you were going to feel good about in a single game wild card, just because they always lacked that ace.
Yep.
And they were going to have to make up for it with offense. They have obviously talent in the bullpen, and as much as we bash them for Pomeranz, Jordan Lyles in particular, those guys have to a degree held their weight, as well. So we'll see what happens. It's tough to say, and another, them making the playoffs, though that market is not currently up at the moment as well. So we'll see where that lands in terms of money potential value, just given, hey, they're one game out. So, crazier things have happened. Maybe it's a rallying cry. Who knows? But hard to think, that the Brewers, whether they get in or not, are long for the postseason past that single game.
So the only team on DK Sportsbook being offered right now to make or to miss the playoffs is the Phillies.
Right.
And they're only 2 games out of the wild card, 1 game behind the Brewers, and they're at plus 1,000 to get in at 2 games out of the wild card.
Looks like you're
trying to tempt that
That's
southern New Jersey market.
Crazy.
I just quickly looked at the rotation. Oh my God, it sucks. I didn't realize how bad it was.
It's not great.
Zach Davies is listed as your number 1 starter. And then Chase Anderson, Gio Gonzalez, friend of the show, Jordan Lyles, and Adrian Hauser.
Which, if I'm in a single game playoff, based on current performance, I would probably go with the number 4 or 5. I'd go Lyles or Hauser.
Yeah.
You would stick Lyles in there for a 1 game playoff?
Well, I'm just saying in terms of if you're trying to ride the semi lukewarm hand. Lyles hasn't been bad, and Hauser's been good from a run suppression standpoint.
Nothing like riding the semi-lukewarm hand to the postseason.
I mean, looking at that options, I think I'd rather run Eric Thames out there on the mound and then see what you can get. Jesus,
it's still a team that's going to have to rely on its offense, and there's still pieces there. Thames, Moustakas, Grandal, like there's guys there, that could still piece together enough of an offensive explosion and then hope the bullpen can shut it down. It's just from a DFS standpoint, the Brewers for many years now have been a boomer bust play where you either are stacking them or you're taking the pitcher against them, and you're going to come out on top if you can play the cards right there. But obviously now it's just far more of a they're going to continue to strike out but lose a little bit of pop.
Thoughts and prayers to the Brewers.
All right, enough. Who are the Brewers going to start if they make the wild card game? This is our first podcast since NFL Week 1, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Fair.
Yeah, that you showed up at. Yeah.
I mean when was did I miss a panel B on Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah, you missed a preseason panel B.
Okay, what? I was here last week too.
Go.
There is no off season for Steve Buchanan.
That's right. I'm here all the time.
If you're trying to do a transition, Julian, you got to own that transition. You
Right.
got to not let him get you down. Blinders on and
It
power
just
through.
didn't make sense what he said.
I don't
It
care.
is our first podcast since NFL Week 1.
Well, and it is the Panel B podcast.
Right.
So if something doesn't make sense, then we're doing the show right.
All right, so go ahead, hotshot. Talk some football.
Where do we want to start?
Sammy
Watkins, Christian McCaffrey.
Let's start with one of the biggest frauds in football with Sammy Watkins. Because now everybody's going to fall for the Sammy Watkins show, and he's going to throw an absolute dud in week 2.
Well, this
that's
works in
what he
terms of
does.
breaking news in that we did this morning at least get a somewhat of a timeline from Ian Rappaport on Tyreek Hill, 4 to 6 weeks, perhaps longer. So I get at least a month.
But this is what happens with Sammy Watkins every year. He posts that monster game, and everyone's like, "Oh crap, forgot about Sammy."
Yeah, but
Watkins.
he has an actual good quarterback.
But he did this last year.
Yeah.
But Tyreek Hill was playing last year.
And Sammy Watkins
this
was
is
always
just what
hurt. Sammy Watkins
what-
was the one that was always hurt last
This
year.
is what Sammy Watkins does. You know what? I've been burned too many times by Sammy Watkins. This is what happens. If you take him in DFS this week, he's probably going to suck.
You have to play him in season long. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I don't. Ugh. Yeah, he's not a great play in DFS this week.
His salary went up
price,
$2,200.
The salary and the ownership. Yeah, no, I get that. You have to mess around there and likely fade him, but that doesn't mean he's not going to be a good play over the next course of the month.
I mean, he's obviously in a lot better position than he was without Hill, because now he's the de facto number 1.
Yeah, he's playing Oakland without Tyreek Hill. I think the bigger thing here than Sammy Watkins going off is Tyreek Hill being out for at least a month.
Yeah.
Puts him in a good spot. But the guy that I would really want to look at here is Mecole Hardman, the rookie out of Georgia, who is a speedster, was drafted as the backup plan for Tyreek Hill's situation by the Chiefs. And obviously Tyreek Hill was in. Now Tyreek Hill is out because of an injury. So Hardman's a guy that they're going to, not put into Tyreek Hill's role necessarily, but they're going to try and get him the ball in some similar ways, I would say. And he's coming out of a really run-heavy offense at Georgia, so he didn't even see as many touches as he would see in one of the pass-heaviest offenses in Kansas City with one of the best quarterbacks in Kansas City.
Well, yeah.
I think he's a great value play going forward as well.
Hopefully they ingrain him a little more this week, given that he did play a lot last week and got
And
one
That's what I was
target.
going to say. He was on the field a ton, and he only got one target last week. Like, that was kind of concerning because when Hill went down, the initial thought was, okay, now it's going to be Watkinson-Hardman. But he got absolutely nothing, which was odd.
I don't really mind that much because he got the snaps, and it was kind of a one-game thing, and they had the lead at that point, and Watkins was obviously working, so they kept going to that.
Yeah.
I think that this is now a spot where now that you game plan with Tariq Hill out, now it's you kind of hit the restart button, refresh button, and say, okay, let's incorporate this kid into the offense. And you can also just look at his preseason snaps. He played about a game's worth of snaps and had 6 catches for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's obviously shown something in the preseason at least.
Enough about week 1 now, given that it's Wednesday. Let's move forward to week 2. 2 very large lines on the DK Sportsbook that I think generally, at least one of them, I think there's a little consensus that it might be a little too large, talking Cardinals-Ravens. Ravens minus 13 there. Well, I don't know. Maybe not the way Bukes is shaking his head. But just to get it in, also Patriots-Dolphins, an otherworldly 19-point spread there. So these are both byproducts of what the Ravens did to the Dolphins last week.
Mm-hmm.
Are either of these, are you leaning, like, what's the most amount of points that you would need there to consider for Patriots Dolphins? I guess just where are we landing with both of these, because these are both rather large.
So for Baltimore and Arizona, I don't know if Arizona is necessarily that bad. They are now on the road, but they showed a lot in that second half, coming back to get that tie with Detroit. So I think that trying to get that plus 13 with Arizona makes some sense. It's a weird number. Getting a 13.5 or 14 obviously always feels better, just because you can cover so much ground with that over the course of a game. But I don't think Baltimore is as good as they looked against Miami because it's Miami. I don't think Arizona is necessarily as bad as they looked in that first half against Detroit. It was a rookie quarterback in his first game and took some time to get going and then found a little bit more of a stride. So
threw the ball 54 times.
Exactly. Great for Kyler Murray,
which was right around his completion percentage also.
Yeah. So I think that Arizona is the team that I would target. Only the Patriots side is, like, how do you even pick a side? The Patriots have lost back-to-back games in Miami.
Right.
They're notorious for having not only losing in Miami, but losing in Miami in weird ways, like that Kenyon Drake lateral or whatever you want to call it last year with Gronk eating dirt at the 10-yard line trying to make a tackle. Like, weird things happen in Miami. But the Patriots are also historically very good when they open up as monster favorites. It's just a division game on the road. I can't, even with how good the Patriots looked against the Steelers, you can't take a team minus 19 on the road in the division. Can't do it.
And I think, like, you don't even need that Kenyon Drake in this scenario. He does that to make it when they're down wins. 24, and it's and it cashes. So I tend to agree that I would lean Dolphins here, just given that also, I mean, well, look, that they're beating.
I also want to make very clear that I'm not betting on the Dolphins.
Okay, sure.
That is a stay. That's a stay away spot. Is what I should have concluded with.
I'm here to make a decision, and I would lean Dolphins, given that, I mean, these guys are being punked and embarrassed in the media, and a lot is being questioned of them individually, and even if they might be trying to get their agents to find new homes for them, they still have to come out and put on good tape then. So it's possible. I think the number's just too big, and it's not to say I have any faith in my boy Ryan Fitzpatrick or if Rosen enters, but 19, Bukes. 19.
Suck it up and play that plus 1,300 money line then.
It's that's insane.
I said I don't have faith in Fitzpatrick.
I mean, obviously it's a ton, and regardless of what team it is, who they're playing, you never feel great about laying money down on a minus 19 spread. But, we just saw them dismantle the Steelers. And this is a team that already feels like they've given up. I mean, if all those reports were true about players texting their agents, basically telling me, get the heck out of Miami. I'm not going to deal with this already. You can't think that they're feeling good about going up against this Patriots offense. Some questions about what it's going to look like now on Sunday with some of the news that's come out with a particular receiver whose initials start with AB. But, even if AB's out of this game, Gordon, Edelman, White, Michelle, there's just so many soft matchups here for the Patriots to take advantage of. And we've seen numerous times Bill Belichick doesn't let up. He's just, pedal to the metal the entire time. Doesn't matter what the score is, and never scared of running it up. The only reason why I don't feel I feel good about the Ravens spread is we saw the Lions putting a decent amount of pressure on Kyler in that first game. Now they're facing a defense that's twice, 3 times as good as Detroit was. Last season, the Ravens allowed an average of 18 points per game to opposing teams, and now we're getting an offense that is still trying to find his identity, a rookie quarterback, trying to get comfortable. I just feel like I don't know how many opportunities are going to be there for Murray with this defense in front of him. I just think that it's one they can really get the pressure on him and easily fluster the kid. So that's why I don't mind that -13 for the Ravens. I think it's obtainable.
Anything else catching your eye? Maybe some of the over-unders, 53.5 for Chiefs-Raiders, looking like it's the highest. Thursday night's game, maybe Bucks-Panthers, 7 points for the Panthers at home, -7, going up against a Jameis Winston-led offense that last week looked like a Jameis Winston-led offense.
I like that 8.5 for the Jaguars. We saw how poor that Texans offensive line was on Monday. How many times did Watson get shelled?
Yeah.
Absolutely shelled. And now, Jaguars are a very good, defense in the front there. So plus 8.5, that feels a bit high. So
shout out to Man Myth legend Mike Leach, grooming Gardner Minshew. He's all about accuracy, man, and that's all he's had to do. All he had to do in college was, quick, accurate throws, and if
he looked good. It wasn't bad. I mean, he didn't come out of that game.
He looked good. Then he took his helmet off, and you saw the Jack Sparrow goatee.
What the heck?
He does not look like a whatever he is, 23-year-old kid. But
he just stepped out of Stranger Things season 4 or something. I don't know what's going on there. But
go ahead.
I was actually going to ask you how you felt about that because I thought that was. I was surprised at how high it was. I actually expected it to be a bit lower. So 8.5 feels pretty enticing, at least at this juncture.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. It's just a lean for me at this point, not necessarily a play. But yeah, the thing that scares me off is how good Houston looked in that first half, I guess, against New Orleans.
Right.
I really like how the offense looks, even with how bad that offensive line is. Deshaun Watson is just able to make up so much with his legs. At the same time, the offensive line is so bad that it obviously lets him down at plenty of times as well when he does try and stay in the pocket. So I was impressed with Houston for a little while. They obviously couldn't put it together for a whole game, and Jacksonville was not terrible against Kansas City. You do have to be worried, given what Sammy Watkins just did to the Jags. What is DeAndre Hopkins going to do to them in this matchup? He could just be the complete difference in the game, and then it's a 14 or 21 point win because Hopkins has 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's something that would concern me a little bit.
Well, the other thing too is
they're just gonna have to be more creative with Hopkins though too, if they choose to be, because I think that was part of it with Watkins. You look at some of those touchdowns where he's wide open, and just watching the way that they schemed those plays up, it was easy for him to get Watkins to get lost in his route, and then he's wide open. Which with Hopkins, it's more technically put him out there, split him out, and then he's just going to, if he gets any one-on-one coverage, he's just getting the ball.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing is, too, is that, Watson definitely didn't look like he was wanting to rush in that game. The 2 long rushes that we had definitely weren't by design. It was just more of a necessity.
Well, that knee hit he took on the touchdown, too, was frightening.
Right, but after that touchdown, he kept favoring his back. We kept seeing them working on him when he was on the sidelines, and it didn't look like he was comfortable. And with the amount of times he's getting hit,
he's not playing 12 games this year.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't know how they can keep running him out there and expecting him to rush. He's taken enough beating, just during any plays, but. Yeah, he definitely didn't look like he was willing to rush. It was almost just when he needed to, and I think that kind of brings him back a little bit too.
I thought Carlos Hyde looked pretty good, though.
I was impressed with Hyde as well.
One thing I'll mention, though, on this game, and probably why I would also lean Jaguars, is it's 8.5, but it's also the second lowest over-under, 43.5.
Yep.
Right.
So you're talking about points are already at a premium.
Yeah.
So a margin of victory that big, like you're talking about domination, really, from the Texans. And I get it in that on paper, you're talking about an undrafted rookie quarterback. But again, like we talked about, one who stepped in, he was the backup really from the start of the preseason, which is scary in its own right. I think might have been at times, but obviously carried himself well enough early, got a lot of reps in the preseason. So, credit to him to not look too phased. Going up against a bad defense in the Chiefs, but, the Texans defense, while we expect it certainly to be better, they're having some issues. Obviously as well. Saw Colvin got released this morning. And so, we'll see what happens there.
I don't know what he was doing on that play. I don't know what he was expecting.
Well, I wouldn't scapegoat also any one player for the defensive philosophy that the Texans seem to employ in the final 40 seconds of that game.
Just so far back on Ginn, I don't know. It was odd. They even pointed out right before it snapped too, and they ended up getting burned.
Although I guess maybe that was he seriously messed up there with the timeout situation. Everyone was so ready to drill the Saints for not taking them earlier, and it worked out pretty well for them.
I think, just sticking with the sportsbook for a second, the strongest spot that stands out to me is Dallas at Washington. Mm-hmm. Washington came out and looked really good against the Eagles, and I think that's being factored into this line way too much because they still looked like Washington down the stretch of that game and blew it. And although they
needed Vernon Davis hurdling a human being.
There were some ridiculous touchdowns in there. The Vernon Davis one, obviously the highlight of them. That's not going to happen.
Another guy who upped that fantasy onslaught, by the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that touchdown also hurt me in Janko's destruction of me. But I just think that Washington caught a lot of breaks in that game early, and then still needed a late touchdown to backdoor cover. I think the Eagles' secondary is probably overrated given what Case Keenum just did to it. I just don't think Washington is a very good team at all. And Dallas looked fantastic, even though it was against the New York Giants, of course. But given what Prescott was able to do through the air with over 400 touchdowns, 400 touchdowns would be a lot.
Wow.
Over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Quite a game.
I mean, you
probably scored 400 touchdowns against me this weekend.
Dak was my quarterback too. So I'm not trying to keep bringing it up. You seem to want to really get
everybody
it off your
that
chest.
had a big game was on your team. It won't happen again.
Just checking the viewers. We keep losing more and more.
Yeah. But yeah, 5.5 for Dallas in this spot. And that's on the move because this was at 4.5 very recently, I think. So Dallas minus 5.5 and the Dallas minus 240 money line if that's what you want to use as a parlay piece in anything you like this weekend. I think that Dallas is in the strongest spot. Well, I want to say to Steve Buchanan really quick, sorry, Janko, I just cut you off, so I was in New Jersey for the kickoff bash over the weekend. Lovely event.
Yep.
Look at that T-shirt.
Here's the swag. So being able to use, this was my first time being able to operate the DK Sportsbook for a consistent period of time, a few days here. And it was great. I'm not trying to plug it just because I'm sitting in this chair. It was the way that you're able to use it is fantastic compared to a lot of other sportsbooks that I've used in my day.
Okay.
By far the most profitable part of my weekend was heavy college and NFL moneyline parlays.
Okay.
Versus going with spreads. Your parlays are a bunch of ridiculous underdogs that you stack together and can't resist the odds.
There was one time that I suggested something like that. You keep harping on it. That one time that I text you, I was like, I kind of like this parlay. What do you think? And you're like, oh, it's a bunch of underdogs. I mean, it lost. What the hell ever, But
side note,
you keep thinking that's all that I do. But all I'm saying is you try to give me so much crap each and every week because of the parlays, and then every week you give one on the show.
Well, you have to know how to parlay.
I know how to parlay. I just like that one. It's okay to underdog parlays sometime.
No, it's not.
Why?
Because they're not going to win.
Every time. Is that mathematically correct?
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Idiot. Go back to New Jersey.
I would love to. DK Sportsbook is awesome.
Yeah, good. They're not going to give you anything
that's
for the
the
plugs.
moral of the story. If anyone's,
But you can take Dallas minus 240 and Baltimore minus 715 and get minus 160 on that.
Okay.
You just said you like Baltimore to cover the 13 against Arizona, right?
Yeah, but I don't want to parlay it.
Well, if they're going to cover, you obviously think they're going to win.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's about this time that I remind you that odds and lines are subject to change. Please see website for actual odds. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and would like some help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. I do want to mention one thing more about the Washington Redskins because it's actually very funny and maybe will provide some comic relief for what I'm feeling is a very icy studio at the moment.
Icy.
Darius Geis going down with an injury again is tough to see. You don't like it. However, it comes on the heels of a Jay Gruden quote about Adrian Peterson, who he made inactive for that game. Right. Probably is going to have to play at least some. At least he'll have to be active this week. And when they asked about his role moving forward, he said, if we have a game, quote, where I think we will run the ball 55 times in a game in I formation, then sure, I'll get him up. He's going to have to do that. They may have to run the ball 55 times in I formation now, I'm not sure. Or maybe they just go with Chris Thompson and air it out. Terry McLaurin didn't look half bad. But your quarterback, at least for this game, they're choosing it to be Case Keenum. So I just thought that quote is money, hilarious.
I actually like Thompson this week, as in a PPR format, obviously, because the Redskins are going to be playing from behind a lot this season. So I don't think that's a bad play at all.
He's... I mean, the quote is hilarious, and I think true if you're talking about what Adrian Peterson can do at this point. But you're also talking about a guy who incensed a lot of people in that locker room when he did make Adrian Peterson active. Right. And you do have to worry. We talked a lot, obviously, already about Miami quitting on its front office and coaching staff. Might not be too far behind with Washington, or maybe even further ahead.
Nope, they're in trouble.
It was a promising first half for Washington's season.
Surprising. Actually, you know what? Funny story. When they got out to that big lead, I was thinking about the stupid parlay that you gave last week that included the Eagles. And you're like, oh, they're definitely not going to lose.
The one that hit.
Oh, you're so stupid.
Ravens, Eagles, Seahawks, plus 105.
I'm pretty sure you gave a 4-team. I'm pretty sure there was 4 teams in that.
But I did also give out.
Okay.
You want to check? I was in Jersey. You want to check my bet slip?
No, I don't care about your bet slip and your $5 parlays.
Eagles, Seahawks, Patriots was another one. I said you can go 3-team either way. That one also hit.
Money line, not spread.
Money line.
Okay. Speaking of a lot of hits, guys, what's really funny to me is so many times on the show, because we do it on Wednesday, we're always like, well, and we want to talk about MLB tonight. Well, the card stinks, DFS stinks, pitchers are all terrible.
I mean, that's basically what
it's only about 8 games. 14 games tonight, fellas.
Wow.
We're burying the lead here.
I know.
14.
And you know what? It stinks.
Everyone scrambled to do your research now because we're talking baseball.
That's news to me. I'm bringing up the slate.
And the night stinks. I'm kidding. No, it's pretty good. It's actually pretty good.
Sorry to my colleagues, my good friends over at MLB Network. I tried.
No, it's actually a very good slate tonight. There's actually a lot of good pitching options, which is good. A lot of stacking options, which is also good. But the pitching up the top is pretty stacked. Strasburg, Robbie Ray, Sonny Gray, Chris Paddock, who I can't figure that dude out, so I usually just kind of stay away from him. But Sonny Gray against the Mariners, that's definitely something I'm looking at a lot. Gray's.
What about $9,800 Reynaldo Lopez?
Yeah, what is going on there? Who was asleep at the wheel for that one? I know he just had a ridiculous start against the Indians. He scored 44.4 DK fantasy points, but nobody saw it because it was off the main slate, so no one even realizes that. But he's been decent, but I would never in my life spend just under $10,000 for Reynaldo Lopez and whatever the hell he brings to the mound on a nightly basis. But Gray against the Mariners, I think it's actually one of the best plays on the slate because the Mariners are striking out a ton, 5th highest K percentage in the league against righties, and they're averaging about 3.8 runs per game over their last 5. Their offense is just in shambles right now. What parlay you have tonight?
So it's a 14-team parlay. No.
All underdogs.
Yeah, all dogs.
Dogs
Pays out $10 million on a dollar. No, I actually, I do agree.
Remember,
from
odds and lines are subject to change, folks.
Right.
I do agree from a sportsbook standpoint that Sonny Gray's a little underpriced there at -150
Sonny
on
Gray?
the month. Huh?
Sonny. It's Sonny. You said Sony. There's two N's.
I agree that Gray is a little underpriced here at -150.
Is that Gray with an E or an A?
An A. So yeah, I do like that spot for the Reds. I mean, I'm kind of tempted by the Nationals. Strasburg is favored at Minnesota against Martin Perez. That's a spot where earlier in the season, I think this would have been much closer priced. So it's not like you're getting value on it, but Strasburg also has been really good on the road this season.
Yeah.
Perez has obviously been coming undone.
But we love and the Twins are actually sorry, hold on.
No,
here.
the Twins are +130 underdogs here. But maybe this is...
we talked about the Twins as home dogs, so we like the Twins as home dogs always.
We usually do, but I would say this is not a spot where I would be too crazy about them.
Here's this is probably a spot that I would look at Washington in the first 5 innings here just to eliminate that Washington bullpen.
That's actually very good.
Just kind of focus on Strasburg. I make a lot of good points, Steve.
I was actually surprised that the Twins were dogs almost that entire series against the Red Sox last week, which is surprising when you think about how bad their bullpen's been, how bad their pitching has been. Period.
Barrios is an underdog.
Yeah, it was strange. Well, yeah, I know the one that they did,
which
lose.
We gave out on this podcast.
You gave out. Let's make that perfectly clear.
Roll the tape back.
No,
Cody, what do we got? No, nothing. Okay, wasn't ready for that. All right, fine.
You brought it up.
I did probably bring it up. But yeah, for a Wednesday slate, this actually, if you want to get back into a little bit of baseball, this would be a good slate to do so.
Sure. Yeah. 40-man rosters, man. It's a burlesque. There's a guy called Mick Broom on the Royals that ZT talked about in his bargain bins, and I just love Mick Broom.
That's quite a name.
Request from on high in the producer booth. Julian, you got any college football takes you want to spew out? That's you got
DK Bagel Boss's college football minute. Here we go.
I'm letting you redeem yourself from your season-long shambles that I put you in.
So for college this weekend, might be looking at a spot where you can use some heavy favorites on the money line parlays. Steve, we have teams like Clemson, who is going to Syracuse, and for some reason, even though the spread on that one is I think 27.5, people still like Syracuse after
27.5.
Oh, I was going to bring up the Tennessee Chattanooga line, which is Chattanooga plus 28. I'm taking that all day. Tennessee's terrible.
Tennessee's not good.
You're going to take that 27.5?
I think that Clemson's in a good spot to dominate Syracuse.
Steve, it's part of a parlay.
Oh, right. Sorry.
I actually like Clemson minus the points there, but if you take Clemson on the money line, I think that you can take them with teams like Ohio State.
30 seconds
and
left.
piece them together with something like the Ravens on the other side, or whichever NFL team you feel most strongly about. And if you take Clemson and Ohio State there, Ohio State is a 16.5 point favorite at Indiana, minus 715 on the money line. You can get even odds pretty much on a 3-teamer with the first two in there being Ohio State and Clemson, which I think is a pretty attractive spot. I definitely slowed down in week 2 versus week 1 on the college football plays, so that certainly caught up to me. But yeah, another team that stuck out on the opposite side of that Syracuse-Maryland game. Syracuse obviously going in the wrong direction. Maryland was projected to win like 4 games this year, and they're averaging like 70-something points a game. I think they're still maybe a little bit undervalued as 7.5 point favorites at Temple, given that just the whole season outlook on them is that they were going to be a really poor team, and they've come out and been one of, if not the best offensive team in college football so far. My minute's over.
Your minute's
That was
been
a long
over.
minute.
2 minutes, whatever.
Very exciting stuff.
This might be the worst episode we've done. I just want to throw that out there.
You trying to diminish my season-long victory?
Yours, that was fine. Julian comes back and just brings. Where's Wyman? Like, can we get Wyman back in the mix?
Or just anybody else that could give me any pushback on college football rather than you guys sitting there like this until I stop talking.
Well, I spent the whole time just finding what the largest spread was. The answer is LSU over Northwestern State minus 51.
I like Northwestern State in a money line parlay.
There is no money line even available for that one. Louisiana Lafayette, the Ragin' Cajuns stand up against Texas Southern. They're 47-point favorites.
The Ragin' Cajuns are good this year.
They're raging.
Yeah.
All right, it's been about 39 minutes.
They were a good cover back in week 1.
Thanks, Julian.
As 19-point underdogs.
Please shut up.
I'd ask if there's anything else we wanted to talk about. But no, I think we're all set here.
Yes, we are.
Wow. One thing I did want to mention also before we sign off, obviously a lot of fun here. And at DraftKings, we get to talk about sports literally every day, and that's pretty awesome. Would be remiss, though, if I did not obviously bring up today being the anniversary of 9/11, something that we will never forget, will always be in our hearts, and always helps kind of put things in perspective a little bit. So, obviously not something we're going to dive too deep into here because we like to have fun and joke around, but, sacrifice of others and things like that is obviously something that allows us to be able to just sit here and ramble on about sports. And hopefully, wherever you are listening, that, you're able to take some time and reflect on that as well. But that will do it for the Panel Beat Podcast. For Julian Edlow, Steve Buchanan, I'm Alex Jankowski, and we'll see you next time.